In this video, we're going to look at some good and bad examples of problem paragraphs. So let's start with a topic. Is funding for Social Security a problem? And if so, what are the solutions? And we have a thesis statement here for that. And I want to pause on that a little bit because it's a very good example of how to do a thesis statement for a problem solution essay. It uses that back-to-back two-sentence structure where you have one sentence previewing the problems you're going to cover and one previewing your solutions. And of course, there would be a topic and purpose section prior to this in the introduction. It would not be the whole introduction. This would be the last two sentences of it. So we can see in this that we're talking about the problem, and we're using that word, right? Funding for Social Security is a problem because, and it gives two causes for the problem, right? The current system is not bringing in enough money to pay for future retirees, and cost of living increases are too large now. Then we have very good signaling language that tells the reader that we're going to give solutions, right, to solve these problems. And then it lists two specific solutions. The government should reduce cost of living increases and eliminate the cap on income tax to pay for Social Security. All right, so we're going to look at some problem paragraphs here. So what I'd like you to do is pause your video, read these two paragraphs, and decide how effective each one is, especially based on what we talked about in the last video for how to do a good problem paragraph. So pause the video, read it, think about it, and then I'll come back and give you my feedback. All right, coming back, we can see that A is not a very effective problem paragraph. It's very hard to read, hard to follow, kind of confusing. And one of the reasons for that is it doesn't have a topic sentence, right? There's no sentence here that says which aspect of the problem is going to be the focus of this paragraph. Which cause of the problem, which effect of it, we don't know. And instead, it just jumps right into evidence. And sometimes people do that. They kind of do this information dump where they just do piece of evidence one after the other without a topic sentence, and also without any context and analysis around each piece of evidence to explain how it relates to the aspect of the problem that this paragraph is supposed to be about. That's what you really see in this part of the paragraph, just dumping evidence. And then later we just sort of have commentary from the writer that isn't really connected to the evidence, and so it's not really making a clear point. B, however, is a very effective problem paragraph. So first of all, it starts with a very good topic sentence, and I'm going to put that in red. And it makes it very clear which aspect of the problem it's going to cover, and it makes it very clear that it's talking about one of the problems, because it talks about Social Security facing a funding shortfall, which is the problem this whole essay is addressing. So by introducing that, we know we're going to talk about that as a problem. And then it's talking about a reason for that, one of the causes. Retirees are receiving overly generous cost of living increases now. So we know we're talking about a problem, and we know which aspect of the problem the paragraph will focus on. We also have enough evidence, certainly more than two pieces of evidence. We have the kind of evidence we want. We have quotes from named experts, right? We have statistics from sources here. And we have good context and analysis to present each one. Let me just show you a couple of these evidence sandwiches. So we'll just do the first one, right? Currently, the annual cost of living increase is based on the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So that's some context there for you, right? It sort of previews that we're going to be talking about the Consumer Price Index and maybe how that's a problem, and it gives a little background about the fact that cost of living increases for Social Security is based on that. And then we get our evidence here, which is a quote from this expert economist, Norm Ornstein. I'll put that in green. And he says the CPI overestimates the effect of inflation on those things that most retired people buy, right? And then we have some analysis here that explains what that means. In other words, the annual increases in the things that most retired people pay for, food, clothing, etc., are not as great as the CPI for the population as a whole, right? And we've got, I think, 3 more sandwiches in here that kind of delves into that in more detail. I want to look at one that deals with statistics because I think that's very useful. So we've been talking about a discrepancy between the amount of cost of living increases retirees get and what they really need. And so this is going to give some more evidence for that. So we've got some context. One example of this discrepancy can be seen in last year's inflation numbers. So we know from that the evidence is going to be last year's inflation numbers, and that it's going to show this discrepancy that Ornstein was talking about. And then we got the numbers, right? We have there the statistics. And then we have the analysis of that, right? And the analysis says basically, well, retirees, since their cost of living only increased 1.65%, but they got an increase of 1.85%, they got a bonus of 0.2% more than they really needed to keep even with inflation. And of course, that really connects to overly generous cost of living increases now. Lastly, I'll point out that all of this evidence comes from sources, right? It's all cited from sources. It's not generalizations. It's not made up examples. It's quotes, statistics. You could also have very specific examples from your sources, and you want at least 2 pieces of evidence and at least 2 citations of sources in each body paragraph, and this course has well more than that. All right. So in the next video, we're going to start looking at the solution part of the essay, how to do the solution paragraphs.